Welcome to another Tech Help video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I'm your instructor, Richard Rost. It's that time again, folks. Time for another quick queries. Number 13. I think I'm going to make this a regular weekly thing because I get so many emails and questions, and I've got buckets and buckets filled with questions, and a lot of them are great questions, but they don't really need a whole video. But let's take a look at what we got in the bin this week. First up today is a forum post in my Access Expert 9 class. One of my students, Matthew, he asked a question, couldn't get something to work right, went through a bunch of screenshots, and it turns out to be the solution was that he was using IFF instead of IIF. And when did Edge start popping up this little thingy here? That's kind of weird. Anyways, this is more of a public service announcement than a question, but I see this all the time. This happens a lot. I used to do it myself when I first got started. So that's why in my videos, when talking about the if function, right, I always say if when I'm teaching it in my videos, because I used to do this myself all the time. I used to put IFF instead of IIF. It stands for immediate if. That's what IIF is. So just keep that in the back of your brains when you're working with it. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, there's a video for you. It's basically an if-then statement inside of a function. So you can say if this, then the value's that, otherwise the value's that. Okay? Okay. Next up, David, one of my gold members, asks, is there a shortcut key to toggle between design view and the VBA window? And one of my moderators, Kevin, posted Alt F11. So it's a nice, easy way to switch between the two. I run into this a lot myself, and I didn't even know that shortcut key existed, so thank you, Kevin. But yeah, if you're even in Form View, if you hit Alt F11, the first time it'll bring up the VBA editor, right? I'll just slide it over here, and then you can just use Alt F11 to jump between them. See? Pretty cool. I'll probably forget that, but if you like shortcut keys, there you go. Here's another question from the forums from one of my gold members, Massey. He says that the code turns red and he loses spacing between the words whenever he's doing editing in his VBA editor. He says sometimes the cursor jumps backwards, all that stuff. And again, Kevin to the rescue. He says you've got a timer event running somewhere. I see this a lot. And I'm going to keep repeating the stuff in these videos because the questions keep coming in. It's the same questions over and over again a lot of times. But if you've got any form in your database open with a timer event, you're going to see this kind of behavior. So you got to shut down any timers you got going on. All right. If I'm in my main menu, go to design view, right? If I put a timer on, let's put a timer interval on here. Let's say, I don't know, 3 seconds. Okay. And in the timer, let's say just in the background, it's doing something. Let's say dim x as along, and then x equals x plus, or x equals 10, whatever. Just anything, any timer event running, right? Save it, close that. Now open this form back up. Now that timer event's going to kick off every 3 seconds, okay? And if you're working on a different form, let's say you're in the customer form, all right? Design view. Okay, coming over here, I'm doing some more editing, comma, do this, blah, 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 blah. See, right there. I didn't touch it, and when that event ran, it just took over, and now this line is in red. I changed my colors, obviously, but that's because that timer event is messing things up. And if I come in here and I want to change this, get rid of that thing, see, it puts it on the end there, right? Or if I'm going to say, this is some text, and then comma, some, see? It's grabbing the focus every 3 seconds. Even if it's not doing anything visibly in the database, if it's a background process or something that runs, it's going to cause a problem for you. So the key is make sure if you're doing editing, shut that form. Right? And I didn't want to make changes. But next up, a question from one of my gold members, Eduardo. He asks if it's possible to dynamically change the height of a text box in a continuous form. No, in a continuous form, you cannot. If you change the properties of one object, you change them all. So a text box, let's say first name, all right, you've got a bunch of them on that continuous form, but they're all first name. And so if you change one of them, it's going to change all of them. You can change things like conditional formatting. So some of the boxes might appear green, some red, based on the contents, but you can't change the actual properties of the object itself without changing all of them. Next up, in the Access Developer Forum on my website, Gregory, one of my students, asked if there is a preferred method for changing a bunch of data, because you can either use an SQL statement or you can use a Recordset Loop. And there's other methods too, but these are the two biggies. And we actually had a pretty good conversation here on the website about it. You can read. I'll put the link to this down below. But as I mentioned here, I started programming in BASIC on my old TRS-80, my Coco, when I was about 8 years old. And so my brain tends to think in loops, right? Like a for next loop or a while loop. And so that's the first way that I learned to program, is to iterate through things, right? It wasn't until I was in my 20s until I learned SQL. Now, SQL does things differently. You just send a command to the server, and the server basically does all that stuff in the background, and you don't have to think in loops anymore. You can say, update this field from this table where, the customer is male or whatever. So you don't have to think in loops. Now, generally, SQL statements are faster, especially if you're using a database server like SQL Server. And as long as you can represent what you're trying to do in simple SQL, then I suggest use SQL. The only time I usually use a record set is if the conditioning, what you have to do to the data is different depending on what's in that record. So you can loop through the records and say, okay, this guy's got this condition and this condition and this condition, so do that, right? It's not just one blanket thing that happens to all the records. If there's different conditions based on the data in the table, and you're going to process it differently, then use a record set loop. So and if you want to read more about this stuff, that's right here. I'll put a link down below. All right, let's head over to the YouTubes. I say this every time I do one of these videos. I don't check YouTube comments anywhere near as often as I check the comments on my website. So if you have a question and you want to post it, you can go to my website and you'll probably get a faster response. I go through my YouTube comments maybe once a week if I have time. But yeah, anyways. This user, CV4, whatever that is, he wants to know if you can change the title bar of the forum, probably the form, to center, and how can you do it? This is something you really can't control. What he's talking about is this caption here, right, in the forms and in Access, the application itself. In some versions of Access, this will be centered on the form and on Access, and in some versions, it'll be left aligned. And I don't know the rhyme or reason. I know it was different from Windows 7 to Windows 8, to Windows 10 and 11. So there's no way to control it. And it's based on what version of Windows and Office you have. So I tried looking online. I did a Google search myself to see if I could figure out exactly what's what with that. But I couldn't find any definitive information on it. It's just completely random. So don't worry about it. It's the best I can tell you is don't worry about it. Okay, here's one I see a lot. People say that I set up a combo box and I see a number, 1, 2, 3, seeing the ID field instead of the name of the state. Obviously, this person's trying to set up a costumer table. What kind of costumes? Halloween costume? No, I'm just kidding. I see that a lot, by the way. I pick on people all the time in the forums for that. Instead of customer, they put costumer. But yeah, basically, you don't have your combo box set up correctly. That first column is supposed to be hidden. And then the second column that actually has the name of whatever you're trying to have in it will display the value that you want the user to see. But the first column, column 0, right, that has that ID, that's the actual bound value. That's getting saved in the table. And run through my relational combo boxes video, and that'll explain that. If you're seeing an ID and you're not expecting to, then you got your combo box set up wrong. You've got to hide that column. And you'll see that in the wizard when you use it to build your combo box. It says hide key column, yes or no. And you won't see that hide key column if you build your combo box based on a query and not a form. I actually talk about this topic in a lot more detail in my Access Beginner Level 8 class. So go watch that for more information. Gone Fish in 2006, one of the more prolific commenters on my channel, mentioned that in my recent video on the images in a subfolder, I said that the image control, right, won't show animated GIFs. And it's GIFs, not GIFs, right? It's graphic, not giraffic. But that the web browser control does show them. And in fact, I mentioned that when I did a video on the web browser controller months ago. So yeah, I'm aware of that. I just think that it'd be nice if the Access team added that feature to the image control too. So yeah, I know. I get it. You know how many people mentioned this to me? I figured you guys knew I knew. I just didn't. Okay, whatever. And yeah, I try to stay away from ActiveX controls as much as possible. There are a couple of good ones, but usually I avoid them, especially if you have a database that you're distributing to other people. William D., one of my Platinum members, asks, is it better to use Excel or Access for budgeting? You know, the whole thing about whether it's better to use Access or Excel for something, it comes down to more about the complexity of the task at hand. You can obviously use Excel for budgeting, and you can use Access for budgeting. Invoicing, for example, you can use Excel. You can also use Access. It depends. In my particular case, I look at how much you need interrelated data, right? That's what Access is good for. If you've got data that, you know, a bunch of different sources of data, like different tables, customers and products, and once you start needing relationships, then I definitely move over to Access. But I start a lot of my projects in Excel. Budgeting, for example, I've got my account balances database that I use for, you know, every day I track my account balances for my checking accounts and credit cards and all that stuff. And that started off in an Excel spreadsheet. And then as it got more complicated and I realized I wanted to do more with it and automate things, then I moved it over to Access because it got more complicated. I started having relationships between the different accounts, you know, making transfers and that kind of stuff. And also automation. I think Access is a much, much better tool once you start getting into programming. Yeah, there's VBA in Excel, and there's a lot you can do too, but Access is more of a program interface than Excel is. So for me, I would always say start with Excel. Excel is a good prototyper for Access too. So you can put something in Excel and lay it out the way that you want it. And then, you know, and keep in mind, eventually you're going to move it over to Access once it gets more complicated. And then, you know, you can work out the layout and, you know, see where the bugs might come in, for example. And then once you've got that good and working in Excel and perfect, then you can start porting it over to Access. And you'll have an idea for, you know, what tables you'll need and what fields you'll need in each table and what types of data you're working with. And so which is better? It depends on your needs. You might be fine with just, you know, a little text file. I don't know. But I would definitely say start off in Excel and then move over to Access if it gets complicated to the point where you want to do automation or you want to, you know, have multiple tables with, you know, accounts and stuff like that. So that's really kind of up to you. You can do it with both. Alan, one of my Platinum members, asks, I've built a database that I'd like to sell, but I don't want people being able to copy it, read some of my tables, or change the design. Is it possible to bill them for a monthly subscription? All right, you've got a lot in this. Let me unpack it slowly here. First of all, as far as them changing the design goes, that's solved by simply making an ACCDE file. Once you do that, it basically scrambles the design of your database so that they can only use the database, like use the forms and reports, and they can't get into your VBA code or your form design. Can it be reverse engineered? Yes, there are companies out there that can do it, but it's not something that's very simple to do. Now, as far as being able to copy it, there's not really much you can do about that. Once they have the ACCDE file, they can make copies. They can, you know, put it on different machines. Now, you can control them registering that software. For example, you might have to make them call you to get a registration code to unlock it. So if they did copy the ACCDE file to another machine that isn't registered, it just won't work. And that's just code you'd have to build into your database. I actually do have a registration seminar that I made years ago where you put this in your database and it'll pop this up when they run the database. It'll say, hey, you got to call us to get a password. They'll give you a key. That's their key for it, right? And then you can give them a password and it'll unlock the database. So if they do copy it to another machine, they'll have to register it on that machine. Now, as far as reading some of your tables go, one of the downsides of Access is that the data in tables is not encrypted in any way. So if you have like proprietary data that you release with your database, then if they get into that backend file, they'll be able to look at whatever's in your tables. Your only two options are use SQL Server online. So if they run the database, it'll connect to your SQL Server and you can control the data that they have access to there. Or you could encrypt the data in your tables. And again, I have a seminar on that. Basically, you just come up with an encryption scheme and it'll scramble the data in the tables so that if they do open the tables up, they'll just see gibberish. And they can delete it or change it, but they won't know what it is. They can't see it. So if you're saving sensitive information, proprietary information in tables, by encrypting them, then you put the decryption code in your database and they'll decrypt it on the fly as they open up the records. So that's another possibility. SQL Server is definitely more secure, but this will work with just an Access solution. Steven asks if it's possible to change the background color of a form while typing details into it. So you can go from blue to orange to green when the form is being completed. Yeah, sure. You can absolutely do this. I do something very similar in my Progress Bar 2 video where I change the color of the progress bar as it goes across. But instead of changing the progress bar properties or the percentage, just change this property here, me.section0.backcolor, and set it to whatever you want. I'll put a link to this video down below. Here's another question that comes up a lot. People are worried about the Access file size limitation. It's 2 gigabytes, but it's per file. So essentially it's per table. Now, if you've got more than 2 gigabytes of data that goes into one table, then you have two choices. You can either prune that data, right? Get rid of some of it, make it smaller, compress it somehow. Take old records that you don't necessarily always need and put them in another table, right? Like an archive table. Like if you got sales data going back 20 years and you only need the last like 3 or 4 years of it, archive it. I have a whole video on archiving. I'll put that down below. Or you'll have to upgrade to SQL Server because SQL Server can have much, much larger tables. I've got a database that's pretty big, hundreds of thousands of records. And yes, I've got it split into multiple backend files. Well, a lot of it's in SQL Server, like the customer records and stuff like that. But a lot of my like course data and things like that are still in Access tables. And if you, 2 gigabytes is huge, people. Yeah, that's a lot of space. And of course, remember, we're not saving blobs in our database. What's a blob? Any kind of object, document files, Word documents, PDF files, images, right? We don't save that stuff in our tables. We save those at the file system level in a file folder, and then we just link to it from our database. Number one reason why when people are yelling at me about the 2 gigabyte limit is because they're storing stuff that they shouldn't be in their database. Things like images, Access was not designed to store that kind of stuff. It can, but it's not designed. Whenever you put an image in your table, it's going to take up twice the space that image would normally take up on the file system. So no, don't do that. No. But yeah, you could have 15, 20, linked tables, and each of those can be 2 gigabytes in size. So it's practically unlimited. All right, well, that's going to about do it for today. I'm going to try to make this a weekly thing. We're going to try to do quick queries Mondays. So we'll see going forward. But that's going to be your tech help video for today. I hope you learned something. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and post any comments you may have below. I do try to read and answer all of them as soon as I can. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, which is completely free. Click the bell icon and select all to receive notifications when new videos are posted. Want to learn more? Click the Show More link below the video to find additional resources and links. YouTube does a pretty good job of hiding it. It's right down there. See this part of the description here, right? The name, the video's up here. There's a little Show More down there, right down the bottom. It's kind of hard to find. But once you click on that, you'll see a list of other videos, additional information related to the current topic, free lessons, and lots more. And YouTube no longer sends out email notifications when new videos are posted like they used to do. But if you'd like to get an email every time I post a new video, click on the link to join my mailing list. And you can pick how frequently to get emails from me, either as they happen, daily, weekly, or monthly. Now, if you'd like to become a paid member of my channel and receive all kinds of awesome perks, click on the Join button. You'll see a list of all the different membership levels that are available, each with its own special perks, including my extended cut videos, access to my code vault, lots of VBA source code in there, template downloads, and lots more. I'll talk more about these perks at the end of the video. Even if you don't want to commit to becoming a paid member and you'd like to help support my work, please feel free to click on the tip jar link. Your patronage is greatly appreciated and will help keep these free videos coming. I got some puppies to feed. But don't worry, no matter what, these free tech help videos are going to keep coming. As long as you keep watching them, I'll keep making more, and they'll always be free. Now, if you really want to learn Access and you haven't tried my free Access Level 1 course, check it out now. It covers all the basics of Microsoft Access, including building forms, queries, reports, and more. It's over 4 hours long. You can find it on my website or on my YouTube channel. I'll put a link down below you can click on. And did I mention it's completely free? The whole thing, free, 4 hours. Go watch it. And okay, a lot of you have told me that you don't have time to sit through a 4-hour course. So I do now have a quicker Microsoft Access for Beginners video that covers all the basics faster in about 30 minutes. And no, I didn't just put the video on fast forward. But I'll put a link to this down below as well. Now, if you like level 1, level 2 is just $1. That's it, $1. And that's another whole 90-minute course. Level 2 is also free for paid members of any level, including supporters. So if you're a member, go watch level 2. It's free. Okay, want to get your question answered in a video just like this one? Visit my Tech Help page and send me your question there. Members get priority, of course. While I do try to read and respond to all of the comments posted below in the comments section, I only have time to go through them briefly a couple of times a month, and sometimes I get thousands of them. So send me your question here on the Tech Help page, and you'll have a better chance of getting it answered. And while you're on my website, be sure to stop by my Access forum. We've got lots of lively conversations about Microsoft Access and other topics. I have a fantastic group of moderators who help me answer questions. Shout out to Alex, Kevin, Scott, Adam, John, Dan, Juan, and everybody else who helps out on the site. I appreciate everything you do. I couldn't do it without you. Be sure to follow my blog, find me on Twitter, and of course on YouTube. Yeah, I'm on Facebook too, but I don't like Facebook. Don't get me started. Now, let's talk more about those member perks if you do decide to join as a paid member. There are different levels: Silver, Gold, Platinum, and Diamond. Silver members and up get access to all of my extended cut Tech Help videos, one free beginner class every month, and some other perks. Gold members get all the previous perks, plus access to download the sample databases that I build in my Tech Help videos, plus access to my code vault where I keep tons of different functions that I use, the code that I build in most of the videos. You'll also get higher priority if you do submit any Tech Help questions. Now, answers are never guaranteed, but you do go higher in the list for me to read them. And if I like your question, you got a good chance of it being answered. You'll also get one free expert level class each month after you've finished the beginner series. Platinum members get all the previous perks plus even higher priority for Tech Help questions. You get access to all of my full beginner level courses for every subject. And I cover lots of different subjects like Word, Excel, VBA, ASP, lots of different stuff, not just Access. These are the full-length courses found on my website. You get all the beginner ones. In addition, once you finish the expert classes, you get one free developer class per month. So lots of training. And finally, you can also become a Diamond sponsor. You'll have your name or your company name listed on a sponsors page that will be shown on each video as long as you're a sponsor. You'll get a shout out in the video and a link to your website or product in the text below the video and on my website. So that's it. Once again, my name is Richard Rost. Thank you for watching this video brought to you by AccessLearningZone.com. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something today. Live long and prosper, my friends. I'll see you again soon.